answer for the questions?
You ain't looking after nothing. You ain't looking after nothing. Let me hear what he's going to say. I want to hear this rubbish.
So, can I thank you all for...
I'm going to give him more of a chance than I did Boris. Yeah, look how good.
You've been very brave.
Can I just say...
Carry on with your speech.
I've had a chance now again to visit the site of the horrific fire a couple of days ago, and it's still a very distressing sight. As you'll be aware, the firefighters with the search and rescue teams and the forensic teams are working through the building as we speak, and they'll be working through the course of the day. And the fire commissioner has confirmed that it will probably take a number of days, if not weeks, to go through the entire block. I've also had a chance to visit Westway Sports Centre and also to the church behind me and speak to a number of the local residents and the community affected. The response from the local community has been amazing. They have come together and they have shown their support for the victims, the families and the friends of all those affected by this horrific, tragic fire.
We've seen nobody.
And as you'll see, understandably, the residents are very angry and concerned and have genuine questions that demand answers. And so, whereas
someone needs to be held accountable.
Where of course
These deaths could have been prevented.
Where of course we welcome the call from the Prime Minister to have an independent public inquiry. We need answers now.
Now.
And that's why I'm calling on the Prime Minister.
Now, not 2 years from now. We need it now.
And that's why I'm calling on the judge who conducts the inquiry to make sure there's an interim response this summer. We can't afford to wait a number of years, either for the inquiry or for the inquest. And that's why it's important there's a response this summer. It's also important that the checks I asked the government to do yesterday in relation to other tower blocks across London, but also across the country, need to be undertaken as soon as possible. There are a number of residents who will understandably be concerned about their safety, firstly in tower blocks, but also in tower blocks that have recently been refurbished, like these tower blocks behind me. So it's important these questions are answered sooner rather than later, and those reassurances have been given. Also, I've met residents and friends and family angry at the lack of answers as to what help the council can provide them. It's really important the council provides housing to those residents who have lost their housing. It's really important the council provides guidance to all those who want to help, who are turning up with van loads of goods, who are turning up with offers of help and not being properly coordinated. And one of the things I saw at Westway Sports Centre was the frustration from volunteers who aren't being properly coordinated. It's really important we properly coordinate the response to this crisis. And I'll do my bit in City Hall to make sure we help the council, if they need help, to make sure we're properly signposting people where they can go. Finally, I want to say this. The way our firefighters, the way the emergency services have responded has been breathtaking. Their heroism, running into danger, the fact that they've gone above and beyond the call of the duty of most of us would expect is quite remarkable. But actually, one of the reasons why we should be proud to be Londoners is a combination of their response, but the response from this community, coming together, helping their brother and sister, helping their neighbour, showing the world the very best of London. Let's take some questions. Sure, take one first.
Families affected don't have proper legal representation so that they can put their points across. And what the assurances will get, their voices will be heard this time.
Well, since 2010, in my job as the Shadow Justice Secretary, as I was then, I was campaigning against the changes made by the government to legal aid, which is denying people access to justice. And many residents here need access to justice. And it's really important when there's a public inquiry that the local community is properly represented by lawyers. It's really important that the questions they have are answered. You can see the anger from the community, justifiably so, because many members of the community have been saying...
Not just the community, it's everyone outside as well.
Many people have been saying for some time now of their concerns about the housing that we're talking about now, but also other tower blocks across London. And that's why it's important that the community has an opportunity to raise these questions and are properly legally represented. So, well, one of the things that the public inquiry will look into is the refurbishment of the tower block and whether the tower block was refurbished in a safe way. And there are obvious questions about value for money and other questions that will be raised. And those questions that demand answers, we can't afford to wait many years for those answers, which is why I'm today calling for an interim report to be published this summer.
We need emergency legislation. We need emergency legislation that insists sprinklers, firearms, the basic safety needs in council blocks.
Exit as well.
Exactly. We need more than one emergency exit.
You're absolutely right about the need for us to be reassured about tower blocks now rather than waiting for many years. That's why yesterday, when we had the meeting with the ministers, the ministerial meeting, I called upon the government ministers to do the checks now of all the tower blocks, not just across London, but across the country. There are many tower blocks across the country. We need to be reassured that they're safe, not just tower blocks that have been recently refurbished, like the one behind me, but all tower blocks. We need those answers as soon as possible. Some of those checks are being undertaken as we speak. They need to be sped up.
Jeremy Corbyn's been saying that for ages. Why didn't you support him, Mr. Khan? Why didn't you support Jeremy Corbyn, Mr. Khan?
The two things we need to do is make sure that we get to the bottom of what happened, but also we need to make sure justice is done.
Shush, man.
Any other questions?
Are you going to apologise for not supporting him?
Obviously,
There are bigger issues. Relax.
Obviously, there are big concerns about communities being split because of the changes made over the last period, communities being divided, communities living in silo, people being moved away because of so-called regeneration. We've got to make sure we understand their concerns, and any regeneration takes place, make sure that people who are local can stay local and benefit from any improvements made. It's really important that the council rehouses people in the short term locally, but also when the work's done to restore the housing, they're rehoused locally. We can't afford people who are local to be moved out either because of this tragedy or for other reasons as well.
So
that's one of the great things about London.
The locals who lost their houses will definitely come back to this area. They won't be rehoused in places like Hayes.
That's one of the things I've asked of the council, and one of the things that the government's reassured me is the government will make sure that anybody who is local and needs to be rehoused will be rehoused locally. Is that okay? Thanks for your question. Thanks for your help. Really appreciate it.
Fed up with these politicians. No handshakes. We want action, not handshakes.
There are pressing issues. Relax. No one cares about what he feels about Jeremy Corbyn. Be quiet.
I'm down here fighting for the people down there. You're telling me to be quiet. Kissing up the politicians' asses again.
No. Fuck you.
Kissing up.
Fuck you. Fuck you.
You wish you could.
Fuck you.
You wish.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.